I'm Tom Shepstone, and you know me as the publisher of Natural Gas Now, but some of you may or may not know that I'm a planner by trade. I have a planning consulting business. I do a lot of work for both public and private clients, and we're standing here in my office, which you can get a little bit of a look at, where I work in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. And part of my career was spent uh, dealing with the Delaware River. Many months I spent, many years I spent working on the Upper Delaware Scenic River program. I actually was born along the Delaware in the town of Calhoun, which is actually part of the town of Delaware in Sullivan County, New York, and I grew up across the river in Damascus, Pennsylvania, which is just a little bit north of here. And I've had a lot of experience with the Delaware River Basin Commission. As a matter of fact, I once admired that agency in some respects, many respects. I knew many people there. They were an agency that always did their job. They essentially tried to work between the states and use the federal government as a resource as well to develop water resources, to manage them, and to work together to do things. And as a matter of fact, when we were developing the plan for the Upper Delaware National Scenic and Recreational River, which I was intimately involved with, we deliberately involved the DRBC because we felt they were an agency that had credibility with various players and could do a good job. Now, subsequent to that, the Delaware River Basin Commission was taken over, I say, by one of its appointed executive directors, Carol Collier, who was appointed by Governor Tom Ridge, essentially. And she was an environmental ideologue and took it down a different road to try to become a super environmental agency. And about a decade ago, when natural gas began to come onto the scene, in contrast to the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, what she did was took the Delaware River Basin Commission in an entirely different direction. Whereas they simply took it as another use of their water resources to be managed, that they would be needed to ensure a water supply for this new economic development of the region, and they decided to regulate it in the sense of looking at the water withdrawals, looking at the water disposal, and things of that nature. She decided, no, this is a big deal. We've got to super regulate this, and we've got to address the cumulative impact, and we've got to look at the impact on forests, and we got to do this, we got to do that. She has an extreme environmentalist bent, and in the course of her many years as the executive director, it went down that road. And at the time that things started to really perk on the natural gas front, she basically sat on her hands, then developed a set of ridiculous regulations, which might have been tolerable, but were really off the charts in terms of practicality. And she proceeded to then completely set on them when Josh Fox and people of that nature came out of the woodwork and opposed them, and her board members went along with her, and we had essentially 7 to 8 years of them just completely doing nothing, just pretending to be doing something, pretending to be studying things. They used money from a group called the William Penn Foundation, which was simultaneously funding the Delaware River Keeper, who was suing the DRBC. And they actually took money from them to study the whole issue, which was just a huge conflict of interest, totally inexplicable. And at the same time, they put all kinds of Delaware River Keeper people on their committees. It was just a total fraud. And finally, when the Wayne Land and Minerals Group sued them, they came out and had to expose themselves for what they are, and they're now proposing a fracking ban, a ban on hydraulic fracturing in the Delaware River Basin, which includes my home county, where my office is, right here, Honesdale, Pennsylvania, and extends up to the New York border and along the New York border on the Delaware. Now, this ban is truly ridiculous. And to put it in perspective, I wanted to show you a little map which shows this map right here, which shows the Delaware River Basin over on this side here. As you can see, that's the Delaware River Basin, which forms the eastern border of Pennsylvania. And then in the middle, is the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. So between the two basins, they occupy more than half the state. But the gas activity is all right up in this northern tier of Pennsylvania, coming down into the southern tier over this way, and then in my home county, which would be right here, Wayne County. And we're the only county in Pennsylvania that actually has natural gas in any significant quantities that cannot develop it. Now, the rest of the Commonwealth over here, the southwestern Pennsylvania, they're not in any river basin commission, so they're not restricted by the rules. Now, bear in mind, the Susquehanna River Basin Commission has allowed natural gas development, has not restricted it, has regulated the water withdrawals and the disposal for about a decade, while the DRBC has been sitting on its hands, doing nothing because it's afraid of its shadow and it's captive to some very special interests. Now, the other interesting thing is the amount of activity. If you look here at this chart, which is a chart put together by Penn State, you can see the amount of activity that's right up here. This is the northern tier of Pennsylvania coming down into Lycoming County and that area, including Bradford, Susquehanna. Susquehanna's right on the border with Wayne County. So we have a tremendous amount of wells being drilled, and these are wells that have been drilled and fractured, over 3,000 in the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, right on the border with Wayne County. There couldn't be a better test laboratory for what the impact of hydraulic fracturing is. Now, having said that, bear in mind the Delaware River Basin Commission, as it is developing these regulations, these proposed regulations which would ban hydraulic fracturing, has said that they could have a big impact on water quality and quantity in the Delaware River Basin. They've cited New York State reports, which we know to be fraudulent, having been prepared by fractivists and then peer-reviewed by fractivists, a complete put-up job. And they've cited the EPA report, which we know basically says fracking is safe, hydraulic fracturing is not a threat. They cite some issues with water quality resulting from spills and methane mostly, which we know to be an issue occasionally, rarely, with gas drilling, but not with fracturing. So the EPA report was a net plus by a big margin for us. When they cite that, they cherry pick a few statements to suggest that there's a big problem. Meanwhile, right next door in Susquehanna County, the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, we have these 3,000 wells that have been hydraulically fractured. And curiously, the DRBC and their notice of rulemaking does not even mention this. They mention the SRBC a few times in terms of the amount of water used per well. They cite some facts from that. They talk about some definitions and things of that nature, but they never, ever mention anywhere in this several-page justification for their fracking ban anything about water quality in the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. That is really strange. And let me tell you why. Because the circumstances are very similar. This is a map of what's called exceptional value watersheds in Pennsylvania. It actually shows what we call high quality streams and exceptional value streams in Pennsylvania. And if you look at it again, you'll notice there are indeed a lot of them over here in the upper Delaware, no question about it. But there's also a lot of them over here in Lycoming County in areas that are being drilled. As a matter of fact, we know that there's wells drilled in exceptional value watersheds in Pennsylvania, which would be called special protection waters by the DRBC. And this is one of their excuses for not allowing hydraulic fracturing. They say it's special protection waters. Well, we have special protection waters in Lycoming County in areas that are being drilled in the SRBC region, the Susquehanna River Basin. And guess what? Those things have been studied. They've been studied a lot. As a matter of fact, if you go on the SRBC website, this is now, you can't really see this, I'm sure, in the video, but you can download this report. This is from September 2017. 3 months ago, 4 months ago? And they summarize data up through September of 2016 from a continuous water quality program that they've been doing for many, many years. to look at not only the impact of hydraulic fracturing, but all sorts of things. They look at stream water quality. They're not looking at cumulative impact. They're looking at continuous impact. They're looking at they're doing a continuous evaluation of water quality. It's ongoing. They look at it all the time. And guess what it says? Over here on page, actually, let me turn to it now. It's, I don't know, page, oh yeah, there we are. Page 6. On page 6, if you go there, I've highlighted it. As a matter of fact, this video will be embedded in a blog post that I'm doing. I'll put a link to this. If you look here, you'll see a statement that I've highlighted in yellow. And let me read it to you, because it's very important. It says, to date, the Commission's remote water quality monitoring network has not detected discernible impacts on the quality of the basin's water resources as a result of natural gas development. Let me read that again. To date, the Commission's remote water quality monitoring network has not detected discernible impacts on the quality of the basin's water resources as a result of natural gas development. They go on to say, but continued vigilance is warranted. Well, sure, why not? I mean, I hope this goes on forever. As long as there's gas drilling, I hope this continues to go on because I expect the same results. So let it go on forever. Let's be vigilant. But the bottom line is no discernible impact. Now, what's very curious about this is that we keep hearing not only that there are special protection waters to be protected in the DRBC, which are also in the SRBC, but we keep hearing about 15 million people rely upon it for drinking water. That's a phony number. Let me tell you that right now. If you can't find anywhere how that number was calculated. I tried to calculate it once, and the closest I could come, including New York City, was about 11 million. But even so, New York City has many, many resources in the northern part of the Delaware River watershed. And they call that their west of Hudson watershed. And they do get water from there to send to New York City, which of course is in the Hudson River watershed. And that area, we call it the New York City watershed, that area is strictly off limits for drilling by New York State, by the fact the city owns a good part of the land, and they're controlling even more of it. So there is nobody in the world who is proposing drilling for gas in that portion of the Delaware River watershed. Nobody. No company, no landowners, nobody's proposing to do that. So that 11 million immediately gets shrunk by 7 or 8 million. And so what are we left with? What, 3, 4, 5 million? Well, that happens to be the same as the SRBC. Because again, if you look at this material that can be downloaded from their site, if you look at this drinking water connection report, you'll see a whole list of water supplies that are supplied by the Susquehanna River, including Danville, Sunbury, Harrisburg, and even York, the hometown of our infamous Governor Tom Wolf, who sits on the DRBC as well as the SRBC. And that's really what this is all about. Because when you look at the two websites for the SRBC and the DRBC, you will see that they have almost identical compacts they operate under, and they have the same governing majority. The SRBC consists of New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and the federal government. The DRBC consists of New York, Pennsylvania, the federal government, plus New Jersey and Delaware. So we have 3 overlapping memberships for these two organizations: Pennsylvania, New York, and the federal government, represented by the Army Corps of Engineers. What this means, this is hugely important, is that the DRBC and the SRBC are governed by the same majority. They are the same organization for all practical purposes. There's no way that they do not know what each other is doing. They are completely aware, or should be, to what's going on. When Lisa Daniels, who is the Pennsylvania representative, the lower level Pennsylvania representative on both organizations, sits on the DRBC and votes, She knows what's going on at the SRBC because she sits on that board too. Same thing, whether if her boss, Patrick McDonnell, our DEP secretary, he knows. He's on both boards. Our governor is on both boards. And it's the same in New York, where the DEC is the same on both boards. The governor's the same on both boards. And they have representatives from, again, their agency. Basil Sagos, who is the commissioner, sits on both boards. So these are the same entity for all practical purposes. Yes, they have different staffs, they have different offices, and so on, but it's the same rules, same conditions, same members, same ultimate decision makers. And there's where the rub is, because we know, as I just told you, that the SRBC has been this gigantic test laboratory for the impact of hydraulic fracturing. That organization has a continuous record. They have a complete record of what the impacts are, and yet there is not a single mention anywhere in the DRBC rulemaking of that data of which these people are aware. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us this was no mistake. This was no error. This was no failure. This was a deliberate action. This was a deliberate avoidance of the facts. The fact that the SRBC has demonstrated beyond any doubt that hydraulic fracturing has no discernible impact on water resources of the Susquehanna River, and therefore is unlikely to have any discernible impact on the water resources of the Delaware River Basin. Throw away all that phony New York data that produced by fractivists and peer-reviewed by them. Put away that EPA report, which I think makes our case, but is you might say qualified by these ambiguous statements that they put in at the end to try to suggest, well, there are methane problems, as if we didn't know there are occasionally methane problems. Of course there are. And they're fewer and fewer all the time, and they're not serious. The practical fact is hydraulic fracturing itself has never polluted a drinking water supply. Those chemicals that everybody talks about in hydraulic fracturing have never polluted someone's drinking water, and they don't threaten the Delaware River Basin in any way. But just put that aside, because the facts are the facts. Let them speak for themselves. The problem is the facts are not being acknowledged by the people who have access to them. Why is the DRBC pretending these facts don't exist? There's only one reason. This is a raw act of political will, political power, a raw grab for land. It's an effort to take our land value, our property rights away, because other people want it. The William Penn Foundation, which, as I mentioned, funded the DRBC itself for a time, and these ridiculous studies intended to continue a practical moratorium, and who also funds the Delaware Riverkeeper to the tune of millions of dollars over many years, and as well as other anti-fracking groups. They are a very wealthy organization, made its money in chemicals, no less. And the heirs, like so many trust funders, are investing it in assuaging their guilt for having been rich. I have no idea why, but that's what they do. And they are involved in trying to work with a group called the Open Space Institute. And together, they're trying to make a wilderness, frankly, of the place where I live, my home. I grew up in Wayne County. I was born in Calhoun, as I said. I grew up in Wayne County. I know this area. This is my land. My family has been here for generations, going back to the 1700s. And we know what this land is. We want to protect it. I've been involved personally in protecting it. And we are the stewards of this land, and we want to be able to provide for our families. We want to be able to economically develop like other regions, and we are being prevented from doing so because the William Penn Foundation and the Open Space Institute and the very wealthy families they represent don't want that to happen. They don't want to have natural gas development because it would raise the price of land. And in raising the price of land, it makes it more difficult for them to acquire it. That's what this is all about. They do not want us to raise the price of their land that they might buy and have as their playground. And that may sound ridiculous. You may think it sounds like some crazy conspiracy, but the facts are the facts. That's what they're all about. If you trace the money, you look at who funds the Delaware Riverkeeper, you'll find it's the same people behind the Open Space Institute and the William Penn Foundation. And you only have to look at what they're doing to see they want the land. So this is a taking, and it is a arbitrary and capricious action. I think this is the epitome, the dictionary definition, if you will. If you looked up in the dictionary what the meaning of arbitrary and capricious is, I think you would find something very similar to this, where somebody is doing something for a very special interest purpose, for their own benefit, for personal benefit, while they're thwarting the public will and the public interest and pretending that there is no evidence to support our view, when in fact there's loads of evidence, and they're ignoring it. They're just totally ignoring it, even though it comes from them under another name. This is simply outrageous, and this is what people have to say. This is what people have to document. This is what people have to put on the record. They need to say this, and say it bluntly and plainly. There's no room for double standards here. What is good for the SRBC is good for the DRBC. And it's time that that D in DRBC, this D right up here, is recognized for what it is. It stands for deceit and double standards.